This is part 22 of Entity Framework tutorial. In this video, we'll discuss many-to-many relationship in Entity Framework with the database first approach. We'll be using these three tables in this demo: courses, student courses, and students table. Courses table has got course ID and course name columns. Here course ID is the primary key column. Students table has got student ID and student name columns. Here student ID is the primary key column. There is a many-to-many relationship between courses and students table. A student can enroll into many courses, and similarly a single course can have many students enrolled. So obviously there is a many-to-many relationship between these two tables, and to store the data we have this bridge table student courses. And if you look at the sample data that we have here at the moment, student ID 1 is enrolled in courses 1 and 2. Student ID 1 is Mike, and courses 1 and 2 are C# and ASP.NET. So Mike is enrolled in C# and ASP.NET. And if you look at the second set of data that we have here, student ID 2 is enrolled in courses 1 to 3. 2 is John, and courses 1 to 3 are C#, ASP.NET, and SQL Server. So John is enrolled in those three courses. Now, if we were to generate an entity model based on these three tables, Entity Framework will only generate two entities: course and student, with a many-to-many relationship between them. Notice that at both ends of the entities we have a star, which means that's a many-to-many relationship. Notice that we don't have any entity generated for this bridge table student course. But in spite of that, Entity Framework knows how to work with the many-to-many relationship between those entities, because this relationship itself will be mapped to student courses database table. We'll look at that in action in just a bit. Another interesting thing to notice here is that course has got students navigation property, which allows us to navigate from course to students, and similarly student has got courses navigation property, which allows us to navigate from student to courses. Let's look at this in action. Obviously the first step here is to create these three tables itself, which I have already done, and here is the SQL script that can do it. I'll have the script available on my blog in case you need it. Now let's flip to Visual Studio. So here I have an empty ASP.NET Web Application project. To this project, first let's add a new item, and we want to add ADO.NET Entity Model, and let's call this Employee Model. We want to generate the model from the database, so select that option, click Next, and let's give a meaningful name to the connection string. Let's call this Employee DB Context. Click Next. So this is going to connect to the database and retrieve all the tables, views, and stored procedures. Let's go ahead and select the three tables that we are interested in, and let's give this model namespace a meaningful name, and let's click Finish. Now, though we have three tables, Entity Framework is only going to generate two entities. And look at that, Entity Framework didn't really do a good job in naming this course entity. So let's stick in an E at the end of the entity name, and let's save these changes. Now notice that course has got navigation property students. Similarly, student has got courses navigation property. And if I right click on this association, and when we go to the properties, notice that end1 multiplicity is a collection of course, and end2 is also a collection of students. So at both of the ends it's a collection, so it's definitely a many-to-many association. And then if we right click on this association, if we go to table mapping, notice that this association itself is mapped to student courses database table. So the course ID property is mapped to course ID column in student courses table. Similarly, student ID property is mapped to student ID column within this bridge table. Alright, now let us see how to actually query the data. Okay, now to query data, we're going to design a web form that looks like this. So we're going to have a grid view, and we want to display the list of student names and the courses into which they have enrolled. Here Mike is enrolled into C# and ASP.NET. John is enrolled into these three courses. So we want the data to be displayed like that. So let's look at that in action. So let's actually add a web form to this project. And then let's first set the style attribute on this div tag, and set font family to Arial. Now let's go ahead, drag and drop a grid view control onto this web form. Let's turn this into the design mode, and then auto format this and choose the colorful scheme. And within the page load event, we're going to create an instance of our employee DB context class. Now we're going to write some link queries here. So I'm going to use this employee DB context, and then this has got students property, navigation property, which is going to students property, which is going to return us the list of students. So what I'm going to do is, whatever data that we get with this link query, we are going to set that as the data source for the grid view control. So from student, so we are going to load each student into this variable. And if you look at the type, look at this, when I hover my mouse over, the student is actually of type student. Okay, so we got the student, and student will have courses. And if you look at the model that is generated here, student entity has got courses navigation property. So what we are going to do here is we're going to load the courses that a student is enrolled into, and obviously each course will be loaded into this variable. Look at that, the type of that variable is course. Okay, so we have the students and we have the courses. All that is left right now is to select a new type, because look at what we want to display. We want to display student name and course name. Those should be the column headers. So I'm going to select a new anonymous type here, and one of the property names within the anonymous type is going to be student name. You can give this property any name that you want. Okay, so I'm calling it student name. And how do we get student name? We have the student object, and that has got student name property. And similarly, we want course name. So course name equals, we have this course object. So course dot course name should give us that. That's it. So that's the data source for the grid view control. And then let's invoke data bind method. So now, before we actually run the web form, let's turn on SQL Profiler, and then we'll investigate the query that's automatically generated by the entity framework. Alright, so the trace is running now. Let's go ahead and run this web form. So now entity framework should generate a query which joins all the three tables. So here is the query. Notice that it is joining students, courses, and student courses tables. Alright, now we have seen how to select data from this three entities, three tables. Now let's see how to actually write data to the bridge table. Let's say, for example, when we enroll a student, the data should be stored into this bridge table. Okay, so at the moment, if you notice, Mike, who has got student ID 1, he is not enrolled into WCF. So let's enroll Mike to WCF course, and to do that I'm going to drag and drop a button control onto this web form. And let's change the text on the button to something like assign WCF course to Mike. And then let's actually double click that and then create an instance of our employee DB context within the click event handler. And now, so what is the course? We want to enroll Mike into WCF. So we need to first get hold of that course. And how to get courses? We can use this employee DB context object, and it has got courses property. So it's going to give us all the courses, but we want the first or default course where the course ID equals 4. Because if you look at courses table, WCF course ID is 4, and this first or default is going to return a course object back. So let's store that in a variable of type course, and maybe let's call this WCF course. Okay, and now what we want to do is we want to assign this course to Mike, and we first need to get Mike. So what I'm going to do here, again, use this employee DB context object, and it has got students property, which is going to return us all the students, but we want first or default student, where the student ID is 1 because Mike's ID is 1. So to that student, obviously we'll have courses navigation property. Recollect from the model, student has got courses navigation property. So we are using that navigation property here. And to the courses collection, we are going to add this WCF course. Okay, so now WCF course will be added to the student whose ID is 1, and Mike's student ID is 1, so WCF course will be assigned to Mike. So all that is left is to call save changes method, employee db context dot save changes. Now let's actually clear the trace that we have, run the trace once again, and then let's run this web form. Okay, now when we click this button, it should assign WCF course to Mike, and there should be a query generated behind the scenes. And look at that, we have that insert query. So insert into student courses, and it's inserting the values for student ID and course ID columns. Student ID is 1, which is Mike's student ID. Course ID 4 is WCF course ID. So Mike is assigned to WCF. So when we reload this, look at that, Mike now is assigned to WCF. Now let's see how to remove a student from a specific course enrollment. Let's say we want to remove John from SQL Server course. And again, to do that, let's quickly add another button here. And let's change the text on that to remove John from SQL Server course. So the same idea. So let's actually copy and paste this code and change it according to our need. So we're going to get the courses. So which course we want? So here SQL Server course ID is 3. So retrieve the course whose ID is 3. So that is going to be SQL Server course. So let's give it a meaningful name. And then we need to retrieve the student whose ID is 2. Mike's student ID is 2. So we're going to retrieve Mike. And then from his existing course collection, we are going to remove this SQL Server course. And then invoke save changes method. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this. Let's actually clear this trace, run the trace once again, and let's click the button, go back to SQL Profiler, stop that, and notice that now we have a delete query. So we are deleting from student courses where course ID, where student ID is 2 and course ID is 3. Alright. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.